Welcome, viewers, to a grand journey through the shadows of history. Today, we uncover a secret. In 1979, one unexpected flight landed in a newly transformed, chaotic Tehran. It carried a masterstroke of strategy, a spark that would soon ignite the entire Islamic world. This was the moment an empire found its ultimate weapon for absolute, total dominance. How did the Palestine card become the key to absolute power? Let's dive deep into it now. The Middle East was burning. Old monarchies fell, creating a massive, dangerous power vacuum. Records reveal the new regime in Tehran desperately needed a magnificent, uniting vision. They fiercely wanted to expand their influence beyond their borders, to control the entire region. But Iran faced a huge obstacle. They were Persian and Shia, in a mostly Arab-Sunni world. To cross this deep cultural divide, they required a banner that everyone would rally behind. Inside smoky rooms, silent policymakers analyzed the map, searching for the perfect strategy. They realized that Shia military force alone could not unite the fractured Islamic nations. A grand, epic crusade was required to bypass ethnic rivalries and secure true leadership. The pain of Jerusalem offered the exact emotional leverage they were fiercely looking for. By claiming this holy cause, Tehran could instantly legitimize its newfound divine authority. The calculated planners knew they had to act quickly before their Arab neighbors could react. It was a high-stakes gamble. If successful, Iran would emerge as the undisputed vanguard. But if they failed, the young republic would be isolated, surrounded by hostile adversaries. The chess pieces were carefully positioned in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Every move was planned with cold precision, treating a sacred cause as a political tool. Soon, an epic chance presented itself, much earlier than anyone in the West anticipated. The revolution had barely settled when a prominent, unexpected guest arrived at the airport. It was a masterful, calculated move to shock the world and declare their new intentions. A brilliant stroke of proxy diplomacy was about to unfold on the global political stage. The world watched in absolute disbelief as the ultimate symbiosis began to take its shape. In early 1979, Yasser Arafat landed in Tehran without prior warning. He was the very first foreign leader to visit the newly established Islamic Republic. The reception he received was incredibly warm, breaking all standard diplomatic protocols. Massive crowds flooded the grand streets of Tehran, waving flags and cheering with unmatched, roaring passion. Arafat stood proudly on the balcony, waving to the immense sea of ecstatic supporters. His trademark keffiyeh blew in the wind, symbolizing a fierce, united revolutionary front. Standing quietly behind him, the Iranian clerics smiled, knowing their grand plan was working. This was not just a display of brotherhood. It was a highly calculated political marriage. Arafat urgently needed a new, strong ally after losing support from other Arab nations. Tehran truly needed Arafat's vast legitimacy to claim leadership over the Muslim world. It was the perfect symbiotic relationship, forged in the intense heat of regional turmoil. The former embassy in Tehran was officially given to the visiting delegation. This bold, symbolic gesture sent a massive shockwave directly through the Western capitals.
Modern scholars argue this single event completely redrew the map of Middle Eastern power.
Arafat declared the Iranian Revolution was a massive victory for his people. The cheering crowds echoed his sentiments, believing a new era of absolute justice had begun. However, beneath the loud, joyful celebrations, a dark and pragmatic strategy was taking root. Iran hijacked the Palestinian narrative to serve its growing imperial ambitions. They transformed a local territorial dispute into a grand, global religious holy crusade. This epic ideological shift allowed Tehran to project immense power far beyond its borders. The Western intelligence agencies watched in pure terror as this dangerous alliance was formed. They knew that containing this epic, revolutionary ideology would be quite difficult. The balcony scene became an iconic image of resistance, broadcasted to millions worldwide. It united disparate factions under one undeniably powerful anti-Western banner. Imagine holding the fate of a nation in your hands. Would you trade your cause for pure power? Take a moment to share your deepest thoughts on this brutal political reality in the comments. For the Iranian planners, this was the undisputed victory of strategic optics. They had successfully positioned themselves as the true defenders of the oppressed minorities. The powerful Arab monarchs, who had long controlled the narrative, suddenly found themselves sidelined. Tehran had stolen the most valuable epic asset right out from under their very noses. This grand balcony handshake was the definitive turning point of the 20th century. It marked the aggressive birth of an exportable revolution, armed with a righteous new cause. The loud, roaring crowds in the capital had no idea they were pawns in a much larger game. They were simply swept up in the intoxicating emotion of the grand, historic moment. But the quiet men in the dark rooms knew exactly what they had just unleashed upon the world. In August 1979, the spark officially became an aggressive state policy. The new regime decreed that the last Friday of Ramadan would be known globally as Quds Day. This grand decree deeply embedded the struggle right into their core national identity. It wasn't just a political rally. It was an annual religious obligation for all. The streets of Tehran quickly transformed into a fierce, massive ocean of furious protesters. Millions of angry citizens marched aggressively, shouting radical anti-Western slogans. They held up torn banners and set fire to foreign symbols in a display of absolute rage. The Revolutionary Guard stood watch, their wooden rifles gleaming in the harsh midday sunlight. This cultural wave was carefully engineered to spread out and ignite passions across the globe. By making Jerusalem the ultimate focal point, Iran forced all Muslim leaders to take a stance. To stay silent on Quds Day was to risk being labeled a traitor to the entire Islamic faith. It was a brilliant, highly coercive tactic that left neighboring nations completely paralyzed. Historical records show this move essentially weaponized popular public sentiment worldwide. Tehran was no longer just a national government. It was the beating heart of a global movement. The intense heat of the August sun perfectly mirrored the burning fury of the marching crowds. Every single chant and raised fist was a clear demonstration of Iran's growing soft power. They had successfully manufactured a massive crisis that only they could claim to truly lead. This unwavering commitment required massive financial and military resources to sustain. But for the supreme leaders, the strategic return on this heavy investment was immeasurable. They began funding proxy militia groups, spreading their militant ideology across borders. The struggle was no longer confined. It had mutated into a massive regional shadow conflict. The fiery protests on Quds Day served as an endless recruitment drive for these proxy forces. Young men, driven by religious zeal, eagerly signed up to fight a war dictated by Tehran. The regime successfully weaponized faith, turning pure devotion into a lethal global weapon. Western intelligence reports from the time describe a massive, unprecedented shift in the region. They noted Iran had effectively hijacked the most sensitive emotional issue in the world. The Arab states watched helplessly as their own citizens began to look toward Iran for guidance. This aggressive policy completely destroyed the old balance of power, creating new enemies. The streets remained chaotic, deeply guarded by the unforgiving revolutionary forces. If a government uses a holy cause to expand its empire, does the cause lose its purity? We want to hear your historical perspective on this deeply controversial tactic in the comments. The strategy of Quds Day completely altered the geopolitical fabric of the region. It proved that a well-crafted narrative could be vastly more destructive than a standing army. The magnificent, roaring crowds were living proof that Tehran had successfully captured the public's mind. The die was cast, and the entire Middle East was dragged into a devastating, endless proxy war. Moving into the 1980s, the heavy consequences of this grand strategy became clear. Deep inside the quiet, sunlit command centers, the architects of this plan admired their work. The strategic sand table was now dominated by their newly established proxy forces and allies. By firmly holding the Palestine card, this Persian nation had completely shattered ethnic walls. They successfully bypassed the massive Sunni-Shia divide to claim absolute regional power. The former Western allies watched in total shock as their massive influence suddenly vanished. Entire nations were drawn into a highly volatile and endless political chess match. But the brutal price of this grand strategy was paid by innocent, stranded civilians. Thousands of completely helpless expats found themselves violently trapped in a crumbling landscape. Dusty streets and ruined train stations became crowded with terrified families seeking escape. They sat helplessly amidst the chaotic rubble, tightly holding on to their heavy, worn luggage. These weary foreigners were just unfortunate collateral damage in a brutal game of power. Their exhausted faces reflected the massive cost of a ruthless ideological war. Behind closed doors, the supreme leaders viewed this immense human tragedy with absolute silence. They firmly believed that reshaping the entire world required a necessary, tragic sacrifice. Historical records tell us they successfully redefined the very nature of modern statecraft. Adopting the Palestinian struggle was never truly about pure national liberation. It was a brilliant mechanism to project total authority over millions of followers. By establishing proxy militias, Tehran extended its reach from the harsh deserts to the seas. This aggressive strategy completely shattered the old regional balance of power forever. The legacy of that winter continues to shape every major conflict in the Middle East today. It stands as a chilling testament to how faith can be masterfully weaponized by the state. Looking back at this ruthless shift in diplomacy, we must ask ourselves a profound question. Was this a genuine act of solidarity, or a ruthless power grab? Tell us your thoughts below. If you value historical truth, like this video, share it, and subscribe for more deep dives.